Okay, so welcome each one of you to the Fast Food and Cafe Virtual Expo. This is, of course, an expo that is live online for a full month, and this is powered by EatOS. And today we are here to discuss and deliberate on a very interesting topic, which is on third-party food delivery. Is that a better option? And joining us are Rashmi Daga, founder of Fresh Menu, Rakesh Ranjan, Chief Sales Officer, Zomato, Karan Singla, Head of Operations, Rebel Foods, Karan Tanna, founder of Coast Kitchens, and Nitish Shah, founder of World in a Box. Unfortunately, Nitish is unable to join on a video call due to technical reasons. And moderating the session is Tanu Ganguly, the founder of Mishri.com. Now, that definitely in the current scenario looks like a very interesting topic to deliberate upon. So without taking any more time, over to you, Tanu.
Thanks, Minnie. Yes, absolutely. Given the current scenario, it is probably the most interesting thing to discuss. Rashmi, I'm going to start straight with you. Your brand, Fresh Menu, promises fresh food, right? So in what kind of a delivery model do you follow? And when you were trying to figure out what kind of third party or your own delivery mechanism you want to adopt, how did you arrive at that decision?
Rashmi, you're on mute, I guess.
Hey. So when we started in 2014, see, there was hardly any third-party delivery options around. So when we started with our kitchens, and this was, people would come order on our app and we would deliver the order for them. So we went around and built the whole delivery infrastructure. And that was a core piece to the business. So the success of Fresh Menu was also because it delivered very well. There was control on the delivery. Our boys knew, how to greet people or how to solve for issues on the ground. In case something spilled over, some issues happened where customer was not satisfied, they were able to resolve the issues immediately because they were working for the company. There was a lot of branding associated with the rider going and building a rapport with customers, and a lot of our customers were repeat customers. So it makes a lot of sense to have your own delivery infrastructure, and this was a starting point. I think over time, Swiggy and Zomato came in with big force. Today, a large part of our orders are delivered through their partners. And I think over time, the SOPs and systems have been reasonably in place for us to be confident of deliveries with them. We also use people like Delivery, Shadowfax, or Dot. So there are third-party providers which we use for peak hour orders, etc., to manage our in-house delivery. So we use a combination right now.
So you have both. You have an in-house system as well and yes, third party.
Yeah. So see, in food business, managing peak hours is the biggest challenge, and you don't staff for peak hour all the time. So we use Shadowfax, Delivery, Dunzo, any provider in a city where we feel confident that they can also deliver our orders, and especially peak orders or weekend volumes, along with our own riders. As a cost, it's more efficient.
Right. Karan, you run Rebel Foods. It's perhaps the largest cloud kitchen chain we have in India, right? If I'm not mistaken. Do you feel that you can make a difference to the overall customer experience, specifically when it comes to branding, when you have your own delivery, when you're instead of outsourcing that piece?
Tanu, hi. So to some extent, I echo Rashmi's thoughts. Like when you work on third-party delivery models and when you have to deliver products, so you can't plan for PR. So you have to have some third-party riders in your system. You have your own fleets, and a lot of business comes from aggregators, Swiggy, Zomato, and the aggregators as well. So we also work on hybrid models. So we have our own delivery fleets as well, and we deliver through aggregators also. But what I feel that while running a big network of around like 300 kitchens in 35 cities, when you want to talk to the consumer, it doesn't matter. So delivery is a byproduct of the final product. What matters is that what is the final product and how is it reaching to the consumer. So while the delivery guy who is taking it, he creates that branding, he creates that personal connect to the consumer, which is obviously good for the business, which is obviously better for the business. We can have a better control on the overall guest experience. But another way of controlling that guest experience is tracking the right product, tracking the right food which you are offering the consumer. If the end game is that consumer has to like the food and the food has to reach to the consumer hot within 30 minutes, and it will be eatable and in the right situation to be eaten. So that's why at Rebel we continuously keep on listening to the consumer feedbacks. We listen to the we do a lot of surveys in ourselves, and we take feedbacks from aggregators delivered orders also, and we keep on iterating in our products. So we work a lot on the packaging. That do we crack the right packaging? Because delivery is all about providing the food to the consumer and going in right hands. And if you crack the right packaging, then you can avoid any spillage, you can avoid any opening of on the way. So what we need to ensure is that food goes safely to the consumer. And if that is cracked, then that's the end game, because delivery will always remain a byproduct of the final
That
product.
solves a large chunk of possible issues.
Yeah.
Katie, would you like to jump in on this? What do you think between the two?
I think we started the business of cloud kitchens or food delivery pretty late, relatively, very, very late. In fact, we started it in May 2019, which is hardly, 1 year. I mean, if you minus the COVID period. And at that time, to acquire the customers on your direct channel was, we thought, too late, because there were a few apps that people had already installed as far as food tech or food was concerned. It could be Fresh Menu, or it could be Fasos app. I mean, the app is called Fasos, or Boxit app, and maybe a couple of other hyper local or city-wise, state-wise popular apps. So to have people download our app was quite aspirational, and it came at a cost. So we are, on the contrary, totally aggregator dependent. I mean, we delivered 65,000 orders in February, which was our best month, and 100% of those orders were through Swiggy, Zomato, or Dunzo, either of these three. I mean, like we say that COVID has made everyone technologically a little advanced, because we had nothing to do but think of tech. So of course we are trying to have our own channel of taking orders and use last mile third party players to deliver those. But again, it's a matter of unit level or that economics, that what's your cost of customer acquisition and delivery with an aggregator versus you doing it directly. And we fail to sometimes overlook the things that aggregator does beyond just customer acquisition and delivery. I mean, there are 10 other things like managing your catalogs and making sure about things on how your food or menu is represented to consumer, making sure that understanding the pulse of the market, curating the packages, let's say like Swiggy Pop or Zomato Meal for One, and then pushing it in the market. So there are a lot of things that an aggregator does in there, that 20-25% commission. So to compare it apple to apple just with logistic cost or with logistic plus aggregator cost is a challenge. I mean, when we have started to develop our own tech to take direct orders, we face a challenge on how our catalogs will be managed, and how we will give discounts, how we will give discount time wise, date wise. What will we do during, let's say, an opportunity of surge in orders like an IPL, for example. So we need to evaluate apple to apple, and I think companies that have started recently like ours will face a huge challenge, and we really need deep pockets to acquire direct consumers, and which is evident from the fact that very established players like Rebel and Fresh Menu have also started to deliver through Zomato and Swiggy, and large part of their volumes are delivered through them. So as much as direct
Rakesh is nodding.
Direct ordering is beneficial, it's a no-brainer.
I pushed Karan to start the cloud kitchen side. That's why I'm nodding a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
RR
was someone who, I mean, when I met him, we were doing 0 orders, and then he has seen our journey and he has guided. But, as much as every cloud kitchen would like to take direct orders, but the value that aggregators bring on table is much beyond just picking your food from point A to point B.
Yeah. Rakesh,
maybe I'll just add a few things. Yeah, maybe I'll just add a few things. And I'm so glad that I'm not being castigated right now, because usually that's the That's why I
We'll
lined
come to
up.
that. We'll come to that.
Yeah, but yeah, well begun is half done.
Please go on.
But in most of the conversations, you get a lot of brick bats than bouquets.
Mhm.
But I think there are a few things specifically on the experience part, and I think Karan really picked on that. Rashmi also picked on that. I think everyone recognizes the importance of that. And maybe just borrowing from what you said, if you were to look how gadgets get reviewed, there is a term called as unboxing, right? And this is a term I've been using a lot recently, is that what's the unboxing experience for the user, right? And that stays with the user for a lot more longer period of time, right? You might buy that iPhone from most probably not from a dingy mobile shop or stuff like that. But what you remember is how do you unbox it, how it works for you, right? And I think on the food side, that has a large enough role for anyone to ignore. Unfortunately, that does get ignored quite a lot. And I can tell you, in the current scheme of things, as more and more dine-in centric brands are now opening up on delivery side as well, for some, it's become a big enough business to start looking at. For some, it's a sort of a question of survival and choice. But the overall experience, the way it can be impacted by focusing on that quality of unboxing, nothing else can replace it. No matter what kind of branding you do, right? We can find midterm solutions, right? So, for example, there could be a midterm solution where, let's say, Zomato rider wears a half-open bib of which is co-branded with the Zomato and the large brand, right? He takes a part of the package, he wears the bib. It's a sort of a co-branded one, it's a throwaway one and stuff like that. It could be biodegradable to make it better. But I think the amount of focus that has to go on that unboxing experience is something that is not replaceable at all, irrespective of who delivers the order.
Right. And like Karan was saying, very interesting that there are so many smaller players now, more so restaurateurs who are depending more and more on this delivery method to reach to their consumers. For them, a whole lot of other things often get missed out, right? How the menu is, the standardized menu, the pictures, the app, the way it loads, the way the payment mechanism, all of that comes with, a third-party app like yours. Rakesh? Okay, I think we have some tech issues. Nitish?
He's back.
Okay, Rakesh, did you get that question? Would you like me to repeat that?
Yeah, can you maybe just repeat it again? I'm so sorry. It's been a sort of a patchy network at my end.
No worries. I was just actually reiterating what Karan had mentioned earlier, that for smaller restaurateurs, it's also the whole package that works, how your menu is loading up, how the payment is working, how smoothly all of that happens without errors. Because even that customer experience, if it falls a couple of times, you will probably just move to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an important lens to look at when we start looking at third-party delivery.
There's a lot that you can. Okay, let me go to Nitish. Nitish, if you can hear us. Nitish, if you can hear us, I wanted to.
I can hear you, Nupur. Tanu, sorry.
Great. I wanted to ask you, how effective do you think these contactless deliveries are that we are seeing more and more now? There's a whole lot of training that goes into, making sure that all SOPs are followed. First, of course, those SOPs have to be put into place. What has your experience been?
Contactless delivery, what I feel is a new fancy term that I think that Domino's started once the COVID. More or less, majority of the deliveries were always contactless, right? If you're living in a society, right? Anyways, the delivery riders are allowed until only at the first touch point. Similarly for the office complexes as well, right? So of course, it is a new repackaging of the entire situation. What the COVID forced us to be. I think it is doesn't add much value in my experience. Probably it's a very temporary phase that we are looking at. This term contactless delivery. Uh, we are used to as the e-commerce have evolved. It has impacted a lot the food delivery as well. We are used to getting our packages at the first touch point or at a common storage area or with our security building guards and picking up our packages from there. This is kind of something that we are already used to. And uh, I think we FNB people keep, whenever we do something, we try to repackage it as because we don't end up reinventing the wheel at all. There's hardly innovation that happens in the food tech. Uh, so so we tend to use a lot of these fancy phrases. But as I mentioned, right, contactless delivery was always part of what was happening, whether it's e-commerce or the food delivery. And of course, it
Right.
adds a bit of security, sense of security to the consumer, maybe. But I don't think it adds much more value than that.
You're right. Probably to some extent, contactless was still there earlier. It was not called so, but the issue now is that in the current scenario, when one pizza delivery guy ends up positive, it leads to a whole lot of things. It has a cascading effect. Earlier, it wouldn't have, right? So, in that scenario, also, I'm coming back to my question of how do you ensure, maybe Rashmi, you can take it, you have a hybrid model, or Karan, how do you make sure that your delivery SOPs in the COVID situation are being met?
I can take a dig at this. I think while we could say contactless is probably just a name or a term that has been coined, but I think there was a big change in the way delivery was focused. I think right from temperature verification of riders, health checks, keeping distance in the kitchen, in the premises. So change of process on how food was handed over to them, secondary packaging, tamper-proof seals, educating them that you have to keep the packet at a distance and call the consumer, get them to pick it up and make them feel safe. Because see, it was a need of the hour. Consumers will trust only when you make that extra effort and you convince them that these steps have been taken. So they've become SOP and they're being followed. So I think there has been a big change on the delivery process. The good news is that the hygiene and the changes are here to stay. And they have permanently made things better for consumers. And not just the organized players. I think everybody in the industry would take hygiene and safety and contactless delivery far more seriously. So I feel there's been a big shift, and the shift is here to stay. Whether COVID is as severe as it is today, or even if it reduces, but I think our expectation in general from food delivery have become different.
Right. Karan?
Actually, I echo again Rashmi's thoughts because post COVID, there have been a lot of changes in SOPs in which the way we deliver, the way we had to go and teach our riders on the similar notes because there were contactless deliveries earlier, but they were to less extent. The majority of contactless deliveries now happening matters a lot because if you're delivering a food at the apartment gate, it is very critical that rider calls up the customer at that time and informs that food has been delivered because else the consumer will end up eating cold food and cold food is the worst thing for the consumer to eat because it has not done its job for the money the consumer paid up. And on the similar note, I'll say that at Rebel, at least, we were really critical about our business from day one about safety and hygiene followed in our kitchens. So post-COVID, this has just further accentuated in terms of the way we get SOPs done at the kitchen. We follow really highly stringent checks in our kitchens. And in fact, COVID taught us that consumer needs to be taught about these safety steps being taken. And we went out and opened up all our safety reports to our consumers. So we started sharing these temperatures of all the riders. So we didn't stop to only riders. Now every bill of our food items have the temperatures for the entire kitchen staff, which is available to the consumer. We send an SMS link to the consumer where from that link, the consumer can look at the 4 pillars which we follow. So it starts with infrastructure. So like we have 200 checks followed daily in our kitchen, which are
Wow.
available to the consumer seen in that link. In terms of people, we do medical tests for all our staff, and all those medical reports we are providing to consumers through that link, which consumer can just open up and see that the chef who's making food is medically fit or not, is he COVID free or not. So we are providing those reports,
Right.
trying to build that consumer trust. We are now moving towards getting all our kitchens HACCP certified. We were already doing our kitchens externally audit through international audit agencies. Now we are providing those reports to our consumers, and this gives us the confidence. And as Rashmi said, that hygiene is something which was done earlier also, but consumer didn't care that much. But now everyone is more caring about hygiene, and that is where I think we at Level, we want to put forward the in-store philosophy which we follow, that the food is surely safe and put out to the consumers. Even all our ingredients, they are sourced from partners who we go and check that no chemicals or no artificial parts are added to our food. So we try to ensure that the secondary packaging is there, tempered food seals are there, and the food goes safely to our consumer.
You know, that's the other thing. Like you said, a whole lot of hygiene standards used to be followed earlier as well. But now they're more heightened. There are new ways to check. There's more focus on the delivery part of it, because, you know, the way the pandemic moves and the way the virus moves is through people, not through food. So those people have to be monitored way more than they used to be earlier. So it's
I'm just going to butt in. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to butt in a little bit on the extension of that point. I think what this entire phenomena of sharing information has done is that it has removed asymmetry of information. Let me just sort of delve deeper into that, right? If you were to even travel to a very similar economy like ours, let's say if you were to travel to Philippines and you're in the city of Manila, it almost feels like Mumbai. It doesn't feel even slightly different, right? It's the same seaside, similar crowd, similar density of population, similar restaurants, all of that. But the tendency of eating out is way more than our country, right? And my understanding on that is for 2-3 reasons. People broadly believe that it's safe to eat out, right? Versus if you ever were to call up your mom and say that I have a bad stomach, the first response is bahar khaya hoga. Like that's the first response, right? Nothing else. So I believe that broadly in the industry, if you were to look at if the industry can go 2-3 orbital shifts, this asymmetry of information has to go away, where one believes we are making good food and the other believes that it's not good food. What has really happened out of this entire phenomena is that people are happy to share information. And this information hoarding or information, inside behind curtains is going away, which is a great phenomenon. I believe that outside COVID itself, because Karan talked about opening up the test reports. If in a peacetime, let me call this as not peacetime right now, if someone was to ask about opening up audit reports, no one would have opened it up. No one, absolutely no one. While they were all fine before as well, right? But there is a very increased willingness to share information, and I think that's
eagerness to share.
Absolutely. Right now for differentiation, but later on for overall industry revolution, right? And that's where I feel that this is going to be a very, very good manifestation of what has come out of COVID. So I just wanted to share that point.
No, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it leads up to what I wanted to ask first. One is, of course, you're sitting on all this information now. You know the health records of all the people. You're doing multiple checks. How do you now take this information to the customer? Because over there, technology and social media both will play a huge role. So can we address one at a time? Katie, would you like to go into what are the tech changes? How do you make sure all of this information does get to the right people, your customer?
A lot of changes are being made right now, and a lot of it
is a cost implication to that.
Sorry?
I think there's a cost implication to that.
Well, yes and no, right? I mean, if there is someone who was already collating this information and doing hygiene checks already at their outlet, it is just about communicating to the customer. Just to not digress focus from what you asked, aggregators have now started to enable a feature where we can fill in the details of what are the hygiene checks done at our store, either do a self declaration on an everyday basis depending on aggregator to aggregator, and customer can see it to an extent that if we don't periodically fill the information, we are not given a hygiene tag, or a restaurant is not given a hygiene tag, so to say. And if you don't have a hygiene tag in today's scenario, when hygiene is one of the top criterias, you lose on the menu clicks, and you lose on the orders. So that's one way where aggregators, where bulk of the orders, like 70-80 million orders are done in India, have started to show it, right? Rebel Foods has come up with a beautiful program called Eat Sure, where one can just scan a code on their bill and see all the aspects of hygiene behind that particular order per se, or the restaurant. Similarly, we are live streaming our kitchens, and a lot of other people are live streaming their kitchens, where you can see the stream of the kitchen for few minutes with a scan code. So this necessarily does not come at a huge cost, because we already had CCTV, we already had good internet. It's just about going that a little extra mile, which is actually imperative in today's day and age. So I think once everything stabilizes, and when the business is not revolving around COVID, and there is normalcy around what's the kind of hygiene that the customers would want to check, either before ordering or when their food comes to them, there will be ways and means to communicate for restaurants and for aggregators to consumers. And I think something in relation to what RR said earlier, ultimately, and Karan said earlier, ultimately, when you get a box or a parcel in your hand, not necessarily that we check temperature of the riders. I mean, I order multiple deliveries. I used to order 15, 18 a week. Now I order 8, 10, because I am also undergoing that cycle. But I have never in last 3-4 weeks checked the temperature. It's just that slip lying there, and it gives me a comfort that they are checking temperature. But I don't think that many people actually read it. So I think when you get the parcel, you have the perception of whether this is from a hygienic place, whether the things are packed properly, whether it is leak proof, whether there are stains on the secondary packaging or the outside packaging. These are small things that go a long way to communicate to customer in that split impulsive second, that whether the food is hygienic or not. Because I don't think a lot of people have time to read everything before ordering or when they receive a parcel. I mean, that's what I feel.
Right. And it's at that minute you decide, will I order from here again?
Yeah, and it all boils down to the food you eat and you unbox it, right? I mean, how are the spoons given, whether simple things that one has a perception of checking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so social media, do you have any thoughts, anyone, on how social media marketing, or just to be, or just using social media to communicate all of these things that restaurants are doing, that delivery is safe, that getting food home is okay, even if you can't go out there and eat?
I think I'll take a dig at it. I think it kinds of add confidence to the consumer. They know what their favorite brands are doing, what kind of precautions they are taking. For example, if I just have to talk about myself, right? There are few brands that I keep ordering from regularly, and it was kind of reassuring to see that they were having the first moving advantage of taking all these precautions, temperature checks online, having all these audit reports available, having the hygiene factors and the ratings by the aggregators all being displayed. So it was kind of reassuring for myself, and I'm sure it's for the consumer as well. And I think we all agree, right? Social media is one of the easiest way to stay in touch with your consumers these days. Your consumers are following you. 70% of the time they are using their mobile, and I think it's the easiest way to kind of reach them and let them know how you are, dealing with this seriously.
Mm-hmm. In fact, Katie spoke of this hygiene check. Do you actually see, Rakesh, a difference in the restaurants that get ordered from on the app? Ones that have more.
So I think there have been two phases of it. The first phase was where it was a clear differentiator, because so we have what we call as Max 8 or Max Safety. But I think in the early stages, it was a differentiator. Now it's become table stakes, right? So in the early stages, if you were doing this, then you were seen as someone who's innovating, someone ahead of the curve, and so on and so forth. Right now, if you don't do this well enough, you're not even in the game. So it's become table stakes. And I think I'll just maybe sort of borrow from the earlier point that I was trying to make, is that not only this, but this will hopefully also manifest into overall confidence of people in hygiene, outside COVID as well, and so on and so forth. So we definitely see a big difference. If someone is taken off the max safety sort of seal, the business actually immediately starts to come down. Not because we sort of temper it in any way, because users think that this is bare minimum. How could you not have this? So there is definitely, I think for us to be, for all of us to be able to now use this as a differentiator, it will require a lot more work. We don't know what more one can do. But as I said before, it's definitely table stakes right now.
Right. Rashmi, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think, just a quick point. I think, like everyone, I think we also made a film where we showed, what all safety measures we are taking. And then I put out a video where I talked about, what we have done and what we are doing for safety. I think the personal video on social made a lot more difference, because that's what creates trust. So I think fundamentally you have to come back with new ways and means and mechanisms to, convince consumers. And that time it was a need of the hour. So I think, it's a mix of, how would you use social to your advantage?
Right. And it doesn't come back to bite you. Sometimes it can be the other way as well.
That's the difficult part, to take a judgment on, what would social reward or where would social pan you. It's a calculated judgment, but we have to go with the flow. I think today Instagram's become so big for food that it's hard to ignore what's being happening on Instagram. So as a brand, you'll have to go and play that game.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Actually, I like to add on that. So as you said, that how does social media play a factor? So especially for, maybe Rashmi can also add on to that, for brands like Fresh Menu or any of our brands from Rebel portfolio, we are digital only brands. We don't have any physical presence. So you see a restaurant which is there physically outside, you always have that craving that a new restaurant has come up and I have to go there and eat over there. So that's the excitement which comes into you when you see a new restaurant which is there physically, which is now a big challenge with post-COVID era. But in brands which are digital only brands like we create, over there we have a large dependence on social media. In fact, all kind of digital marketing. It's not only social media, but how do we interact with the consumers? And digital marketing and digital space and social media is the only space where we speak to our consumers. They get to interact with the brands, and this is where we actually create big brands. Like Beruz was one of the bigger brands, first brands to create 100 crores in India at the faster pace, and Aman Story is now almost reaching there. And see, we always will be on money crunches, so we cannot be doing ATL campaigns every day. We cannot be doing a TV ad. We cannot be doing a print ad every day. So social media, digital marketing, these spaces play a big factor, and reaching out to consumer to build a trust or to create a brand. In both ways, digital is the way to go forward. As and as cloud kitchen companies which we run, we don't have physical presence which consumers can see. So we are the highly dependent on how do we speak to our consumers in all the platforms. It's not only, as Rashmi said, Instagram is one of the bigger platforms, but we end up speaking to consumers in OTT platforms like Hotstar, in all social platforms like YouTube. So this is where we go and interact with the consumers and create brands. I think that's why.
Did you feel, Karan, that in the last 3-4 months your audience was behaving differently or engaging differently with you for all of these digital campaigns that you probably ran? Like, was the engagement higher than normal? I'm thinking.
I'll say the engagement is definitely higher because now the virtual dependence or virtual setting of an audience has also gone up.
Sheer traffic is gone
the
up.
traffic has straightly gone up. So people are more engaged digitally than they were earlier. If you have to see a movie, you're not going to a cinema hall anymore. You are just looking at Hotstar. So over there, the interaction with consumers has definitely increased, and we have also used it to our advantage by reaching out to consumers, as I said in my point earlier, by going out and giving a medical report of our staff in social media. So that's how we could go viral and tell consumers that this is something which we are doing, which no one else is doing. And this always gives more, this is a more easier way to reach out to larger audience and build that trust, because people know that this is what this brand is doing. So definitely I'll say that in last 4 months, social has played a big factor for us to help us survive and go up.
Right. And that data that you get, or the information that you collate from all your users, your loyal users, returning customers, that's crucial. So I'm thinking that when you depend on third-party delivery, do you feel that you lose out on some of that consumer data that you might use in your next digital campaigns or your next promotions?
I'll say that when you lose something, there's always some gain. So
Okay.
yeah, so while having data is always good, right? You should have data which will help you to directly interact with the consumer and understand what they want eventually. But we find our ways and means to eventually talk to the consumers. We do a lot of surveys. We get data on rating. We get feedbacks of consumers from aggregators. Both Zomato and Swiggy share those data with us, from where we actually know that how our products rated, how are our brands rated, and we use that data points to analyze internally and make iterations in our product. So I think what matters, and what I said initially, is what product are you offering, and is that product offering as per what consumer demands? If you are able to bridge that gap, which is giving the changing your product as consumer demands for. If consumer is saying that your product needs to be more spicier or needs to have more quantity, then we react on that. We take those interactions, we take those steps by reading that data which is available with us, and we keep on doing a lot of surveys. And these surveys, these interactions, data points help us to build our marketing strategies also, because that's how we decide to put in money in digital.
Right.
So I would say that having
Katie,
data is always good. But yeah, we find ways and means to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, having data would be great from aggregators, but that's. I mean, no one would like, no one would not like having data. But when we don't have data, of course, we rely on the analytics of the consumers. That what's the kind of repeat orders that we are getting. What's the kind of funnel? I mean, if our if our menu click to cart to order is improving or not. So such analytics give us a generic feel of how we are behaving with our consumers, and those analytics are very well available to us from the aggregators. So besides the fact that we cannot do direct marketing to our consumer, we can do a lot of other analytics of the other touch points with consumer by the data given by Swiggy and Zomato. And of course, I feel that if you monitor your, let's say, a repeat ratio going up steadily every month for that particular brand in that particular location, which means that your consumers are engaged with you, and if you are losing some, you are gaining some, and that's how it would be even if you have data. I mean, you, of course, you can force your coupon codes or discounts with the consumer. But again, he's getting this message during a festival or during IPL from a lot of other brands. So, there is already a reason besides discount that he has to order from your brand. So, I think ultimately, we can't calibrate the effect of not getting data, direct consumer data in terms of their phone numbers. But, whatever we have, we have to utilize it. I mean, whenever we debate internally that data milta to hum ye kar sakte the. So my argument is that जो data मिल रहे हैं उससे हम क्या कर रहे हैं? I mean, there is a lot of analytics available.
But you can still.
Yeah, are we monitoring the kitchen preparation time? Are we improving it? Are we monitoring the funnel? Are we monitoring the repeat ratios? I mean, उतना सारा तो available है जहाँ पे improve कर सकते हैं. That will in some way organically lead to the rise of orders. I mean, there is no. The only thumb rule is to improve the health of your operations of restaurant. And of course, if you get data and you push market to them, it will lead to a faster growth. But डेटा नहीं मिल रहा है तो भी आपको वो प्लेटफॉर्म के यूजर्स तो मिल ही रहे. So I think there is no right or wrong here. This is what it is.
That's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'd like to jump in. It's a sensitive topic, so I would of course love to jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think beautiful points, without a doubt. The points that have come forth, some of them I had also not even thought through. But let me just add maybe a bunch of flavor alongside. I think there is this big saying, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Uh, and with great data comes great responsibility. And I think that responsibility of using data, a part of that definitely, I think Katie and Karan both sort of picked up. And I'll come on to the responsibility side a little later. I think the other way to look at data is when we have only single point of contact data or a single set of consumers data, you aren't able to benchmark it. You can't necessarily have that to understand the market. And I think that is one big part of what we really look at as consumers. For most of us, either for Rashmi or for Karan or for Katie or for anyone, for example, all the aggregators offer multiple ways in which we could collaborate much more closely, right? Ability to retain users better, ability to acquire users better, ability to retarget users better, and so on and so forth. A lot of this comes from the learnings of those 1 million orders that you do every day versus a small fraction, right? So that's a much more optimized, much more sort of sanguine way of looking at the data, because probably, when a particular aggregator is trying to work on a particular type of a cuisine, they're probably already done 20 such experiments where they have failed, and maybe the 21st experiment that they're bringing in is slightly more polished. So I do believe that aggregators and third-party platforms in general are able to bring in a little bit of best practices from here and there. That is for sure. Second, I believe that I think Karan mentioned this point beautifully, is that you need data for doing all of this that we talked about, but you also need data for direct marketing. And I think it's an absolutely valid point. But it makes a lot of sense when you have a large direct marketing channel yourself, right? So many times, and that's where the responsibility part comes in, is that have you taken the responsibility to create a large direct marketing channel for myself? For everything else, how do I sort of manage my users better? There will always be a strategic partnership that one can do and sort of achieve goals on that. And for my ability to be able to directly target my consumer, I need to first create a good, efficient, direct customer marketing channel. And it's really a delight to see, how, for example, Fresh Menu would have done this in the past, how Rebel has done that as a sort of overall entity, how Karan does it actually. In fact, Katie does it as well. Through a lot of celebrity endorsements and so on and so forth. So just having data is not going to help until unless we have that direct marketing channel with consumers. And is it efficient or not? There's no point spending $500 for that, getting one additional order, right? So one has to sort of play that balance.
Balancing act.
And I think that's very, very important.
Okay.
And,
my next
if I have
question.
to add, sorry, I'll just add to what Rakesh was saying, right? With since the social media pages are already so interactive, right? And platforms like Facebook and Google already give you opportunity to retarget those users who are already interacting with you. So with the evolving of digital marketing, right? The only thing जो आप नहीं कर पा रहे हो is direct SMS नहीं भेज पा रहे हो.
Yeah, and because Nitish's voice has gotten lost, so I will just probably carry forward from there.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah, Nitish is back.
Okay, so that's the only thing you're not able to do it. Otherwise, the Facebook, Google, all these digital marketing tools, right? They're a wonderful opportunity for you to interact with not only with your consumer, right? With the friends of friends. I mean, all these features are enabled by Facebook and other digital marketing platforms, right? So apart from just, as I mentioned before, right, not able to send them offers or updating them about some new menu that you have, except for the direct marketing, everything else is still possible. I think 90-95% of these whatever your marketing efforts or campaigns you want to run, you would be able to achieve without having these mobile numbers as well, is what personally
Yeah, I agree. I fully second that, Nitish. Thank you so much for sharing. And I have just a sort of, I'm not a digital marketer, but from whatever I have eavesdropped on my marketing team together, is that the age-old world of demographic data is dead, right? No one looks at demographic data. It's the engagement data, right?
True.
And that's the most relevant. A 54-year-old earning 30 lakhs a year might behave exactly the same as a 19-year-old earning 6 lakhs, actually not earning at all, but being on a pocket money of 10,000 rupees a month. It's the engagement that matters. And a lot can be done once we take interest in understanding that engagement, right? And that is the most crucial understanding of the data than anything else. Be it the phone number, be it the demographic, be it the age, occupation, household income, all of that has started to not matter anymore.
Absolutely true. In fact, I mean, a lot of us blame Zomato, right? That or the aggregators, not just Zomato, that they took away our customers, right? If our customer had that, ease of access, ease of ordering, that entire experience, they would have never moved to another platform. If we were able to give that experience, that seamless experience and everything, they would have never moved out to another platform, right? And so, most importantly, it's these third party who is getting you this data, and they have absolutely full right on this data.
Okay.
I know everybody disagrees with me, but that's okay.
No, everyone's a little shocked that you just said that, but okay, we're just silently.
Yeah, this Monday is coming out to be one of the best Mondays
You
I've
can't
had.
see us, but we smile politely. But no, I'm just joking over here. But no, so Nitish, let me ask you this. So you're saying that there's generally a lot of conversation about the commissions that third party. Let's bring our conversation back from data to our third party aggregators, or the choice that you should make for yourself. Do you think that the kind of commissions that are generally spoken about in the industry, so saying that it's all right, that's kosher, it's fine, because hey, against that commission you're getting a whole lot of convenience, the ease of acquiring and all that. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I'll give you a case example of my brand. When we in 2015, right? Cost for me to do a delivery in Gurgaon was 110 rupees, and Zomato or the other party ended up charging me 70-75, including the order closing charges. Today, I have to run a Facebook ad and get a consumer to land on my page and order on my website. Even if I optimize my digital marketing to the extent, it's still 105, 120 rupees. Add another 110 rupees to the delivery. That's not even my order size sometimes, right? I mean, of course, this battle will always be there, and there should be this battle, because otherwise, the ecosystem will not grow and not exist. But a lot of money burning that these aggregators do themselves. Most of these I can vouch for this. Most of these smaller restaurants will wipe away if these third-party aggregators are not there. The market is so much dominated by them, right? And I mean, and a lot of times restaurants have, like a local community of restaurants. They have tried to launch their own delivery platform, like a marketing things, right? But they have not worked, because there's no accountability. As Karan mentioned in the beginning, it's not just about catalog management or the food. Imagine if the order is late, right? If the order is late and following up, who does he follow up with? Small restaurants, you cannot expect to have a customer service executives, right? If you're adding that cost, 15-20,000 a month, right? Do all this cost analysis. Third party comes out to be way more cheaper. I'm not even saying that, and it also depends on, of course, big brands like Rebel and Fresh Menu. They can afford a fleet of 100 riders. Imagine a fleet of 100 riders and not getting any restaurants due to COVID. How do you bear that cost? All that risk third party bears up. It is, of course, what commission, what percentage is always debatable, but however the market is growing. I first signed up on Swiggy at 2%. I've seen that journey from 2% to 23, 24 to 25%. And as the markets have grown, it makes sense. I'm not saying it should go further up, but it makes sense. It is valid. They have their businesses to run as well.
Rashmi?
I think, obviously it's a very controversial point. I think something that I would have loved aggregators to do better in the last couple of years, it's not about the percentage of commission per se. See, we all understand that there is a rupee cost per delivery. Like, you have to spend a flat amount to get the delivery done. There's a cost of logistics. I think the focus should have been on maintaining AOVs, pushing the brands and merchandise and catalog to make more money per order, because we in India are at the lowest AOVs in the world. And I think that's the problem in our food delivery industry, in making money, nothing else. See, we all food, we are here to manufacture, we are here to innovate, we are here to customer experience. Swiggy and Zomato are here to convert customers and get them more frequency and get them to order. I think the overall industry would benefit massively if we focus on AOV as the core to the problem, which for last few years we did not. I think COVID is teaching all of us to focus on AOV. We have seen the magic that better AOVs can do for our business. And I'm hoping that we stay on course. Extra discounting, encouraging a customer to order one gulab jamun, encouraging him that a 50 rupee free delivery order is okay, is what hurt us the most. Otherwise, even restaurant would be okay paying that delivery commission because it has to make money for him. And the restaurateur is making far more effort in running the whole ops, cooking food, dealing with supplies, dealing with perishables. The headache that he's carrying, and if he does not make money at the end of the month, why the hell should he?
It's absolutely, right? Yeah.
We are here with larger businesses. Everybody at a different size would have a different set of problems. But I think we have more focus on the repeat business, on the AOV, and encouraging customer that you have to make us money.
Yeah.
You also have a need, and we also have a need.
That's
then,
true. I think it's
then we work on a percentage commission or a flat commission amount per order, or whichever way we target it. We can, and it's very transparent economics. I don't think now, after 5-6 years of running food delivery, it is some magic number that somebody would shake up from somewhere. So it's well understood.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very good pivot, Rashmi, and especially around the average order value, fondly known as AOV. But I think absolutely, if you were to look at 2 years back, and this is more in support of what you have said versus necessarily contesting that point, I think all aggregators had this sort of fine balance, tightrope walk to do between market expansion and AOV, right? I think all markets go through this, like telecom, for example, right? It had the choice between expanding the market and going lower on ARPU. We are one of the lowest ARPU markets, possibly even in Asia, right? The tightrope walk was definitely a fair expectation, but I think the tightrope walk did not happen. How do you manage the pace of expansion along with managing AOVs? And I think the COVID in that way has also brought a lot of positive. Like average order values right now are up almost 30-35% across all cities, and it has upheld itself even after unlock 1, unlock 2, unlock 3, unlock 4. Because even as aggregators, we realize that there is so much juice here versus only expanding and growing, right? So it's also a realization for us.
To that.
It's been a very, very big realization. And that's why even from our side, there is so much now focus in terms of, how do I make sure that a higher average order value user gets serviced the first? How do I make sure that, someone who's ordering a large order gets the best possible experience so that the repeat retention is better? Earlier, these goals existed, but maybe as slightly as a secondary goal versus necessarily being the first and the foremost thing to work on. Sometimes when you're trying to create too democratic a system, then also some of these things don't work very well, right? But I think COVID has shown us that food delivery can actually be profitable if you do it the right way. Versus thinking that, the only hockey stick is the only way to sort of make your business profitable, right? Is that you suddenly get a lot more transactions and your fixed costs get spread across a larger number of transactions. COVID taught us that even on a smaller or maybe even 30% of the base of transactions that you were doing, you can actually make profit if your average order values are much higher. So I think that's a very, very powerful point. And I think that's what the focus will be for sure. And all should probably sort of unify energies in some way or the other to get there, right? So yeah, so at least from our side, not necessarily representing Zomato's vision commitment in this conversation, but there is a lot of focus on improving average order values, largely because we could see that it can go 30-35% up. we'll keep that in check.
Katie, Karan, do you have thoughts on that? This being our last point.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, Katie, please.
Are you sure? I'll go first. You'll go on to go
Yeah.
first, Karan.
No, nothing. I just wanted to add on what Rashmi and Rakesh added, because post-COVID, the industry has seen tough times. There are restaurants which are actually shutting down. So commission is the last of a problem. I'm telling you, the commission is the least of the problems for any brands to survive, because survival became tough for so many restaurants. As an industry, we have suffered a lot. And at this time, we have also learned a lot. And as Rashmi and Rakesh shared, that average order value is definitely something which is the way forward to increase your profits, because while your overheads remain there, you can make more money from the same kind of order, from similar order at similar delivery cost. You are putting out more food and making more money from the same consumer. So definitely that's a better way of making money in the business. And at this time today, I'll say that obviously commissions can be debated, can be reduced, and will always be a point of contention, because that's money which makes your business profitable. But that's our least problem right now today. The bigger problem is to fight out this times and increase maybe more AOVs.
I would add to that, a very interesting perspective that on a younger company's discussion with Zomato and Swiggy, they have never been stuck upon their commissions if the total account GMV or if the AOV of a restaurant is goes higher, or if it goes higher. So in some way, I feel that duopoly here is leading to compete between both of them in terms of number of orders, and hence there is some discounting, and there will always be a series of younger restaurants which will give discounts, and then it will create FOMO, and then others will give discount, and that cycle never stops. I feel that principally both aggregators. I mean, if let's say hypothetically there was one aggregator remaining, it sounds monopolistic, but I think that they understand that at higher GMV of a particular account or higher AOV of a particular brand, they will be happy to lower the commission, but that might also stop them from giving aggressive or making aggressive campaigns and discounts and encouraging newer restaurants. I mean, unfortunately, this industry does not have any entry barrier, and I don't know for Rashmi, but and Nitish, but Rebel and me, we are all we have taken advantage of that since does not have entry barrier. Me from management consultancy, or Rebel from different backgrounds, have opened restaurants. Correct, Lakshmi. So and ironically speaking, if you take the top 5 hospitality companies by valuation in India, barring of course Domino's and McDonald's, who are doing it professionally and they have their peers guiding them, none of them are from IHMs or hospitality background. So that way, there no entry barrier has helped the industry. But then there are a lot of people who have started restaurants from home, home chefs, which is good. Their food is really nice. And surprisingly, we have seen that they are selling at higher ticket size, and customers are willing to pay. And on top of that, on top of a 600 rupees burger, you are willing to pay a 100 rupee packaging and a 200 rupee logistic fee, delivery fee. But when it comes to Zomato, you want to be a Swiggy super to save logistic. You want to go to the coupon code section and try which coupon codes are pro. You want to be a pro to get additional discounts. So I think it's the FOMO for both the consumer and brands, which is not allowing us to come out of this cycle. But the only answer is definitely the AOV, and all of us on this table agree to it.
Agree to it. Yes. But there is that we've all discussed. There is great value in having away a lot of your headache, who can take away a lot of the logistics issues from you and add value there. And then you have to figure out if the commissions and eventually the AOV works for you, right? Any last thoughts from anyone? Rakesh, do you want to have the last word on this one?
No, I think I shouldn't do that. Fairly new to the restaurant.
Usually Zomato has the last word. So
let Zomato have the last word. Yes. We have monopoly here today. Today we have monopoly.
Yeah, otherwise would be ganging up. But I can tell you, one of the things that I would pick up where my connection sort of broke off, and maybe I'll use that as a sort of more parting words. But I really enjoyed the discussion today. Not because it was a more congenial conversation, but because I think we opened up a lot of points which do not get talked about. So in that way, I think it's a fantastic panel. I rarely have had an opportunity to have this engaging a conversation. So thank you for that. The other point I just wanted to mention is that we all have to see this as partnerships across. The moment we start seeing one as a vendor and the other as a supplier, this breaks, right? Because we are not in an industry which is highly evolved. We are in very early infancy stages right now on the delivery side. How old are we? I joined Zomato 3.5, 4 years back. And when I joined, we didn't even used to even talk about delivery in Zomato. Like 3.5, 4 years back, we were like, there is this business, who cares, right? So this business is in, this entire industry is in its very infancy. And the more we sort of move into a partnership model, is it a third-party delivery model or is it a third-party partnership model? Is where we start sort of solving a lot of problems for both or for all, right? And I think that's important as a sort of a word, as a phrase, but also as an attitude. And I think that will help all of us tremendously as we move forward. That's what I had to share.
Lovely. Thanks, Rakesh. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rashmi, Karan, Nitish, Katie, for joining us and for this very, very balanced and fun, engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.